Warm welcome to everyone who's joined shoot today for this gardening. We are going to bust a few myths regarding these two very key factors, which forms the basis of life, I would say. And I would like to introduce RUR Green Life. We are a decade-old organization, passionate towards making our planet green and creating more eco-conscious citizen. You and I be more conscious about what is available in our surrounding and how we should, choose conscious, be a conscious consumer, and what as an individual we can do to contribute towards a greener tomorrow, keep our earth, our planet happy, and yeah, be positive. So we have few products and services, like we have our patented composting model, which is used to cater to most over 60 to 70% of your total waste, that is bio waste, can be transformed into very rich compost, which is then further used to create more green cover, more garden, more food. That's our vision. Plus, we also help you to understand what segregation of waste is, the preliminary step. If you do that well, it's a job half done. And you have started on a very positive note if you start segregation in three different categories, that is wet, dry, and trash, that is non-recyclable. We help you tie up with a local recycler for your dry waste recycling, and we educate you to choose conscious consumerism to reduce your trash, because the only solution for trash is to not generate, is not sustainable recycling. So we ask you to reduce or say no to the single use plastic, and choose recycled product or choose more eco-friendly product over use and throw. And our whole approach is towards a circular economy. So that's what we do. We also tie up with corporates and manufacturers for CSR and EPR initiative. Coming to our two wonderful speakers that we have over here, RK, she is founder of RUR Green Life Private Limited, and she's been passionately working towards making the planet green since past 10 to 15 years. She is a Stanford graduate and has a family of RUR Green Life, where 10 of us work very passionately towards the main key goal of reduced landfill to in our planet. Then we have Miss Rukmini, uh, who works with Startup India, and she's also she's associated with Startup India and has been extremely passionate towards creating a greener uh, planet around her. And if you visit her society, you will find a nice pretty green corner where she does her composting, and she also plans to make an urban garden in her own building. And she has motivated a lot of her building members to become core members of the Green Champion team, which drive each other, that is neighbors, to uh, help help a successful recycling at source as much as possible. The aim is to divert over 90% of the total waste into recycling. Yes, so as I said, we celebrated two very, very important days in this week, that is World Bee Day. Our life depends on green. What are the types of composting? What is composting, which has been a very, very constant question in our registration link. So, Ms. Manisha, would you like to throw some light on what are the types of composting and what is composting to begin with?
Yes, a very warm good afternoon to you all. And I'm really overwhelmed to see the webinars, especially in these days where people have a lot to do at home, people signing up and wanting to know more about the environment. So I think it's been a good reset time for all of us. I mean, everybody is at home, and the idea is that as we get back to a normal life, we become more conscious of the environment. And today's session is just to give you a brief insight into what we as individuals can do, the step we can take towards protecting our environment. And so to me, composting actually is a miracle of nature. I mean, it is the building block on which we all stand. It's a sum total of life. You know, everything connects to composting. So, like most of us have gone to a forest, maybe not recently, but at some time in our life have walked a garden or walked a forest. Um, it's very natural, right? I mean, you don't have any sweeper coming and sweeping the forest, or you don't have a truck picking up waste from the forest. The forest takes care of itself. And usually, when the trees shed their leaves, they shed their flowers, they shed fruits, everything goes into soil, and it is nature's wonder. I mean, it's really a miracle that how everything breaks down, right? By the action of air, by the action of microbes, a lot of flora, fauna in the soil, and they do their job, their work, and they break matter down. And that's what composting is. It's a very natural process. It's replicating the forest way of life. I mean, the way things happen in the forest. And it converts all natural waste, that's all your biodegradable matter, by the action of enzymes and microbes, into a very rich material over a period of time called compost. And compost is nothing but matter broken down, which is rich in nutrients and minerals, and again ready to grow life again. So it's the circle of life. It is. It is fine to just say that it's like birth and rebirth again. You know, it's very natural. So that's what composting is, and that's why it is something very important that each of us should do, because it's like connecting you to life. And very simply said, it just brings you closer to nature. And so that's why composting is very close to our heart, and we've been practicing it at RUR for now 10 years, and have, I'm proud to say, through various projects, are recycling over 600 tons of biodegradable waste annually into nutrient-rich compost. So let me just give you an insight about what are the different ways in which we can compost. So, so the compost is basically considered aerobic is one type, that is by the action of air. And there's something called anaerobic composting, which is by not allowing air, without air. Anaerobic, not allowing air to come in. Now, traditionally, we've had composting going on for years. I mean, in the rural villages, people are composting very naturally. And that's what they use, a pit-based composting. So the first simple thing is, you dig up a hole where there's some soil, where water can percolate naturally down, obviously, and you keep layering your wet waste, and you keep layering a balance of dry leaves. This is a simple method which a lot of people follow and have been traditionally for ages been following. And it has its limitations, especially in urban cities like where we live in Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, where the whole city has been concretized. There's very less space available, one. Two, there's very less of soil left. So in an urban setup, pit-based composting is also practiced, where you kind of make a bed above the ground, and there are many designs where the water is collected out. However, 4 months of monsoon, pit is very exposed to rats, cats, and other things, so it is difficult. However, it is practiced, but there are these limitations. If it's not rat proof, 4 months of monsoon make it tedious. Again, rotating the pile is difficult. And so, but it does break down. I mean, it's a natural process. You could do it anywhere. However, the pit has these challenges. Also, it occupies a lot of space. For that quantity of wet waste that you put in, you would need a larger area. So this is one method. The other method is in-vessel composting, or what we call tumbler-based composting, or a rotation mechanism, which is off the ground, which is very ideal for urban setups, where you can, you don't have ground space in the compound, and you can look at terraces, any ventilated place. So you obviously, aerobic means you need hava, you need air. And you can do it in a window grill also, if you are just handling for a home composting method. And if you're looking at community composting, which is more than one family, if you're looking at 4 families, 10 families, 100, 200, 300, doesn't matter, decentralized waste management, you can do community composting. And community composting, this is an ideal, InVessel technology is an ideal technology because it's very clean. It's rodent proof, rat tissue and tissues, these things getting attracted around, which can be tedious in an urban setup. Because obviously we don't have predators, we don't have snakes around to come and take care of the rats. And
What she was trying to say here was for urban setup, a decentralized waste management system is something that is suitable. I'd like to ask Ms. Rukmini to throw some light why she thinks composting as such a important thing, and why should everyone adopt?
Yeah. Sorry. So can you repeat your question, please, Aparna?
Yeah, my question was why should you think that we should do composting?
Well,
Each one of us.
yeah, I don't think we have a choice. I don't think we have an option. That's of course one way of looking at it. I think we're too far gone now to say that we are, we're not going to take care of our own waste. But I think more than that, I can tell you, I mean, my journey and my story and how I got into it, and that may be helpful.
Yes.
I mean, of course, I have known Monisha for a long time. We are school friends. So I was, kind of walking the RUR journey from a distance. So I was aware of this space. And also, of course, reading about it in other places. But I think at some point, it's the distress about the environment, what's happening around you, really hits you. Especially I think the moment for me was when I saw the photographs of the whales, the dead whales with a lot of plastic bags in them. And I said, whatever we're doing is not enough. It's not enough to take a cloth bag to the market. It's not enough to say no to plastic bottles. We have to do much more. And interestingly, we can do much more. That's the best part about it. 70% of what waste we generate, we can actually not send it out anywhere. No whale needs to come in contact with it. I think also at some point I just kind of realized, the how, and this is somebody that I'm very inspired by also told me, how interconnected everything in this world is. And, this COVID time is a very interesting time to talk about it. You think about a virus in some town in China, and here we are, a global community which has been locked down and whose life course has completely been changed by that one virus, right? It's just
Totally agree.
yeah, it's we feel like we've really conquered everything and we can control everything around us. We can control our own lives, and look at us, we can't control a thing, right? And I think and this is what the person who's inspired me a lot, Poonam Kasturi, what she says is that nothing reminds us of how much we are interconnected with each other and with the world like waste does. There is no way, by putting waste out at your door, that you're getting rid of it. It's really going to come back to you. It's going to come back to you through your water, through your food, through everything. So the only way to deal with it is deal with it. And I think that's really where it all started for me. And I think that is what was the most convincing thing for me. And definitely, I mean, Aparna, to set the facts right, I was not the only one who was leading the process in the building. Of course, I kind of brought in RUR and kind of got this moving. But, when we started talking, we realized that a couple of people were already doing home level composting. So that's, I think, the exciting thing. When you start looking for partners and collaborators, you find that some people are ready and they'll just kind of join you on the journey. So that's really, and I think it's also the realization that nobody else is going to sort out this thing for us. We'll have to do it ourselves. I think it's not enough to keep talking about it and to keep saying how distressful is this, and why are we not taking care of our planet? It is just that we have to do it ourselves. Nobody's going to do it for us. The BMC can pass any law it wants, which is great, which is very facilitative, but nobody can really do it except us. And I think that I hope I've answered your question, Aparna.
Yes, Rukmini, very well. And yes, the team of Green Champions is what does wonders. And one very interesting fact is most of our project sites, we have about 100 odd projects. And most of the projects, a building which has 300 flats is only motivated by some 3 to 4 people in the whole building who manages to keep those 400 families on their foot to do the segregation, to ensure that the composting is done right, the compost is utilized. So yes, we do have the power, and if we decide to make it happen, we do make it happen. So I think we have Miss Manisha back here,
I'm
and she
sorry.
can continue with the composting
Yeah.
types again.
So sorry for the break. I had a network issue. I'm at my farm, 7 acres of land with a lot of stuff growing away from Mumbai during lockdown. So it's in a way I'm very connected to nature right now, which is a blessing, but sometimes the net goes away. So thank you for having me back. And so I was talking about the composter, that we have an in-vessel composter. I'd like to show you a demonstration. Aparna, is it clear? Can you see and hear? Hello? Aparna, can you hear me well?
Hi, yes, ma'am, we can hear you well.
We can see
Yeah.
Have to
Monisha.
stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an in-vessel technology, and I started my journey 10 years ago composting in a bucket. First, I used an mesh-based system. Then I used a bucket with holes that still works. And if people want to start out today during lockdown, just take a bucket, make some holes all around on top, on the sides at the bottom, put a stand at the below, and composting can happen in any contained system of the ground, because in the cities we live. You just have to add a balance of wet waste. So I have my wet waste here, which is collected. Yes, it's mango season, so there's some yummy mango peels and my mango seed. So seeds, leaves, banana peels, fruit peels, cooked food also. You can put your bhaji, tea leaves, eggshells, everything can go. This is biocomposting is a process. So, you can put citrus peels. Unlike a pitch-based system, you will be limited to put cooked food and citrus foods because they get acidic and they change the pH. So they're hard to manage of the soil. But in biocomposting, because we are putting it in a contained system, you can add all your biodegradable, as long as it's natural and biodegradable. Only oil like achar or something very soiled gravy, it will be recommended you wash it off in a jali. Just like oil and all doesn't do good in your stomach, it doesn't break down very well in biocomposter. So other than that, your tea leaves, if they're sugary, put it in a chunni, wash it out a little bit, rinse it in water, and then add it. So to add it, we have these lids. They are all stainless steel 304. So again, I've worked with a lot of materials in the past, like mild steel, painted. Material when broken down over time can become a bit acidic inside, and therefore a lot of rusting can happen. So you need to look for rust-free material, especially the contact point. So this is a simple lid. And as you can see, when my finger is pointing, this is the air ventilator. So as I said, we are looking at aerobic composting. That's the easiest, the most natural way to do it. And we have what is called, again, a drain control valve below that's collecting the water, and something to rotate. Like as you can see, these are the vanes. They help rotate the waste inside. So all you do is daily open this up, add your kitchen waste into it. And these are the smart air ventilators. So whenever you're looking for an aerobic composter, look at ensuring it has air ventilation. The oxygen must go in and continuously go in. Otherwise, you get people always stop composting because they don't get it right the first time. Remember, it's a learning process. It's like cooking. First time your rice may get sticky. Sometimes it may get burned, but you still will make a rice and eat it. So composting is like cooking. It takes 1 or 2 cycles to learn. Once you figure it out, it's going to happen. So just keep at it. That's rule number 1. And, make sure your pile is aerated. What we have is a simple way to rotate this drum. As you can see, it's rotating. And that's how you can ensure that the waste gets mixed. So in an aerobic composting system, along with your wet waste, which is containing nitrogen, it is very important to add a dry biodegradable substance. So we recommend dry leaves. In fact, now is the season for a lot of falling dry leaves. So you should collect dry leaves in the compound and store them for composting. That's very important. You crush your leaves and you add it into the pile, right? If you don't have dry leaves, which I mean, I get a lot of people saying, oh, where will we find dry leaves from? Well, biggest environmental challenge in India is burning of leaves. So, you need to go to a park and collect them, but now in lockdown, obviously won't have that opportunity, but maybe in a building or neighboring building. But remember that if you don't have dry leaves, and this is usually in 4 months of monsoon, many societies land up, not having dry leaves, then you can put sawdust. It's bhusa, lakde ka bhusa from wood. That's also a natural biodegradable substance. You can add that in, but we surely recommend, or you can add cocoa peat. Cocoa peat is coconut husk. It's the husk coming out of cocoa. It's again a natural substance. You could add that. Mango grass, somebody is asking, well, dry grass is very hardy. Twigs and dry grass are very hardy. They won't break down easily in an in-vessel system. They would have to be shredded and added, ideally. Or if you have an open area where you're putting your leaves, you can leave the grass and it'll take longer time to break down. So this is composting because it's slow and steady. And I think lockdown has taught everybody who in Mumbai, whenever I said, can we get compost tomorrow? Can we get it in 10 days? Well, everything takes time in nature. So 45 days is the minimum cycle time for all this wet waste to turn into nutrient compost. I'm going to show you. This is what your wet waste will become. Very light. And you see, I've just planted some seeds just 2-3 days ago, and you can see these baby leaves. I don't know if you can see it, but if you can, they're very cute, and I'm excited. My methi, and I put some rye in here, and it's growing. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about gardening a little later in the session today. But this is about composting, and remember that after 45 days, the compost that you get, okay, that's going to be only 10% of your input waste. So if you're a family of 4 people, generally 700, 800 grams of waste a day. Now in lockdown, you're cooking more, so maybe 1 kilogram. 1 kilogram in a month is 30 kgs. So in 45 days, you will only get 3 kgs of compost. Very less quantity of compost. And that compost you can put into your plants. So I'm just going to give you, I'm excited to show you my Bengan plant. Where is Bengan? Can you all see? Yes. You can grow your Bengan, you can grow your chilies with compost. So it's a beautiful process, aerobic composting. You must opt for that option. And of course, after aerobic, there is vermicomposting. A lot of people say, what is vermicomposting? Well, vermicomposting is when you put earthworms. These are special red fatty earthworms that are put to break down matter. It's fantastic quality of compost that you get, yes. But it's recommended when you have large leaf quantities, especially when you're, doing it in gardens or farms, or when you have a lot of leaf litter, as we call it. Then vermicomposting works well with food waste, especially. Worms are very sensitive, especially if you add like cooked peels, all this citrus peels inside, lemon, the worms will not survive. So what happens, a lot of people start with vermicomposting and add too many cooked things inside or many peels that the worms don't get along well with. Also with vermicomposting, worms require temperature below 24 degrees to survive. Our ambient is 30 plus. So they need to go really underground, into rich soil space where it's cool to survive. So therefore, for homes in cities like Mumbai, in metros, or in small towns like Nagpur, Pune, where there's a lot of concrete, we have found that biocomposting to be a very simple, easy to implement process. Aerobic biocomposting, it works very easily. Quality of compost is excellent to grow herbs, you can grow chili, you can grow vegetables, fruits, papaya, everything goes easily with it. And one more point that when you're composting, uh, if anybody can answer, it's a quiz question. Why do we only get, you can answer in the chat box, okay? We'll see who's awake and who's answering quickly. But when you add 30 kgs of wet waste uh, into your composter, why do you get only 3 kgs of compost back? Like all this matter which you pack today into plastic bags, you put it in a truck, it goes all the way to the landfill. It's just transporting so much of waste, and we are causing so many carbon emissions. So what happens? Why does the yield only come to Sandeep Kulkarni has replied saying it all becomes gas. Meera Singh, yes. Meera Singh gave the right answer, and many more have replied that 80% of our food waste has water. So a lot of the water comes out. So therefore, you allow the water to come out. Some of it gets evaporated, some of it we collect, and that is what we collect is called compost tea. So I'm going to show you, this is a drain mechanism. Can you see? I will have a container here, and every day during the active cycle and the cooking cycle, water will come out. We collect that, we call it very compostive, is very rich in nutrients. I dilute it 1:10 and I add it to my plants, right? So this composting, so basically see, composting doesn't generate any waste. The whole waste goes in, comes out, even the water is used, and all the gases which we are talking about, because we are doing aerobic composting, we are adding oxygen into our piles. Therefore, only CO2 is released in small traces. Methane and ammonia, they will get released when the pile is anaerobic, okay? So remember that a lot of people say, have these myths, composting smells, composting is messy, it's not safe, gases get released. If you're doing aerobic composting and doing it properly, then there won't be any smell, there won't be any issue of gases. So this is about the various forms of composting, and we can guide you further. If you want to do it at home level, you can start at home level. Many people have window grills. You can start with home composting, and after some time, you can move to community composting. Rukmini has done amazing at her society. Thank you, Rukmini, for your efforts. We need one green champion. In waste management, it's not like a solar panel project, like our friend recently shared. You can put a solar panel on the terrace and nobody in your building will know that solar panels have come and you're getting power through solar. Or if you put rainwater harvesting, it's really a hidden process. Rainwater comes and goes, and you're doing good for the environment, but you don't need to be involved in rainwater harvesting or in solar. But when you're doing composting, it requires human intervention, because it's only when you give your waste segregated, clean and neat, then only we can put in the composter. In this, I cannot put paper or plastic or metal. It will not break down, right? So human participation, mindset change, behavior is very key to successful composting project. So like in Rukmini's building, they went door to door at Sand Pebbles, and I really, hats off to you, Rukmini, went door to door telling people how to segregate, where what waste goes. That is the first step in community composting. So community composting, the advantage is you can ensure a lot more waste gets recycled, because you design your system in that capacity. At home, you can do everything, but when you see, this mango gutli, it will not break down, then you have to add it back. So we have someone from Siemens here who have said, who have been using our RUR Green Gold aerobic composters. Thank you, Santosh Mahatreji, Marathi ji, for joining us. And you have really adopted the system well, and Siemens has been generating a lot of good quality compost. So I'm really thankful for them for being here. They already have the system and they are still working to get more knowledge about it. So thank you, Santosh ji, for joining us
Thank you,
here.
Monisha. Thank
And
you.
yeah, great. So this is about the different forms of composting. And now we will show you some insights about how the aerobic composting works with action of air. Aparna, you're presenting that slide?
Yes. Just a minute.
Yeah. So our
I'll
waste
showcase.
has nitrogen. The wet waste has nitrogen, and the leaves have carbon. Okay, it's a simple equation. If anybody is done chemistry in school, you'll remember, or if you're working chemical side now, this has nitrogen, this has carbon. So C plus N plus O2 will give you CO2 and water. Moment you remove the O2, and remember you need, that's why air ventilators allowing air to go in. Once you allow O2 inside, then your equation is balanced. If you remove the O2, then you get CH4 and NH3. CH4 is methane, NH3 is ammonia, which causes a smell. So the biggest first question people say, we don't want to compost it because smell aega, mungi aega, bugs aega. Well, mungi, bugs, smell, everything is going to come. When you go to the gym and you work out, you sweat, right? I mean, don't you go to the gym? And when you come out of the gym, do you feel bad about it that you're smelly? You have a shower and you're fine. So same in composting. As it breaks down, there may be some anaerobic, but the smell doesn't come to you unless you go right, put your head in. As long as the pile is balanced, the odor will be contained and it will not cause any bad foul odor. When people don't balance it right, when you don't add the amount of right dries, is when you get the smell. So once you keep this balance right, you are going to have a successful composting project, just like Rukmini is here and told you, and our friend Santosh is also here saying from Siemens, they have been doing this with their canteen waste. It works like magic, and it's really nice that we have been able to generate a lot of compost, and hope more and more of you join this movement.
We have an interesting question about the type of composting by Anjali Gupta, that if microbes are involved in this process, are anaerobic, what will happen? If anaerobic microorganisms come here, then what will happen? In an aerobic system, if there is air, anaerobes don't thrive. So mixing and well balance is the way to go. If you do take care of these two things, then anaerobes won't come. And if there are anaerobes, then yes, under anaerobic condition, methane is what is generated. That is your biogas, one of the methods of waste management that is also there. So biogas will be generated in such a case. And usually in aerobic composting, when it is well balanced with dried leaves, wherever there is air, anaerobes will not thrive because they're more stricter than the aerobic organisms. So it's difficult actually to maintain the anaerobes. And when you do bucket anaerobic composting, that's called Bokashi's method of composting. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes. Aparna, somebody is
Anjali?
saying that a lot of heat gets generated in biocomposting. Yes. So if you have an active pile, let me show you. I mean, if you just open an active pile like this and you put your hand in, you will think you will get it warm. Okay. So it's going to be warm here. So the reason it's warm is because it's going to obviously, break down and it's going to produce heat. It's an exothermic process naturally. A lot of heat gets produced. So in fact, you can even go up to 60 degrees of temperature in some of the piles, especially when there's a lot of mixed waste. So heat is a good sign. It is a positive so that your compost is cooking. That's why we have 3 stages. Active stage, the first few cycles, first few weeks is when your waste breaks down. Then we put it through cooking. Then it reaches high temperatures. And then after that, it stabilizes and it starts cooling. And then your compost becomes cool. That's a sign when the heat goes away, your compost is cool and you come to know that it is ready. With smell, with its texture, with its temperature. So, in fact, the heat actually takes care of any unknown vectors like pathogens that could arise and ensure that your pile is safe. So, we've done a lot of pathogenity tests and we found that the whole process is very safe for human intervention, for people handling it, and it's very safe and hygienic for you to do it at home or in your community. So, over to you, Aparna, for the next question.
Yes. One question that I want to ask Rukmini is, so here's a picture. If you see, the temperature here right now is 62 degrees Celsius. In the second picture, when it is actively breaking, when you have fresh waste added, it is close to 48 degree. This is composter at Rukmini's place. 48 degree, and then it increases up to 62 63 degrees Celsius, and that's when it your composting pile is sanitizing itself. It's free from pathogen as well. Yes, so the question that I wanted to ask Rukmini was, a lot of us complain, or rather, have an issue that how do we manage time? We are working professionals, and it's very difficult to find time to do all of this composting and all. It is time consuming to do. So would you like to throw some light on that, along with your journey, how you have managed? You are
Yeah.
also a working professional, how you have managed to streamline this thing.
Yeah. So, Aparna, I think it doesn't take any time, honestly. It doesn't take any extra time. I think the mind block that we have, and what seems like the reason why it might take more time and it's going to really take time away from our busy schedule, is because of the need for segregation. And it's the question that we often get is, how do you teach your domestic help to segregate? How do you teach children to segregate? And how do you ensure that the segregation is maintained? And I think human beings are strange beings, really. I mean, we can create habits around anything. It's just a matter of creating that habit and understanding why we're doing what we're doing. So I don't think it takes any extra time. It is, I think, an alertness and a consciousness. That is what it takes. And I think most people who are here on this webinar are here because they already are. They know that they need to do this. And so I'm trying to do this. My point is, do you think you need to do this? And if you think you need to do this, it really doesn't take any extra time. And there's something that Monisha had said many years ago when she started off on this journey about convenience versus collateral damage, and that's really stuck with me. And I tell a lot of people about this, because convenience is just chucking everything into the same bin and putting it outside your door and believing that it's really out of your way and never going to come back to you. But collateral damage is, it's all going to come back to you. And I think the loss of convenience is so minimal when compared to what you're really doing. I mean, when I look at the amount of waste that I'm not sending out into the landfill, on some days I have no trash to send out. I'm only putting it out, things for recycling, to sell to the recycler, and for composting. There is no trash to put into that BMC truck to go into the landfill. I think that is such a gratifying feeling, that any kind of doubts about how will I make the time and how do I get this habituated, how do I tell my domestic help to do this, I think just kind of flies out of the window. So that's that. It doesn't take any extra time, for sure. For sure. It's just a matter of creating that system and the habit, and everybody falls into that habit. Right now, we've had to halt our composting for a few days because we don't have, our waste collection, etc., has not been smooth for a few days. But we're still segregating, right? We're still putting out our waste in segregated bins. We're not mixing it because we've just gotten to that habit. We're not going to mix our waste ever again, hopefully.
Oh, lovely. That was a very, very interesting to, ponder upon the convenience versus collateral damage.
Monisha, that's
yes,
quote unquote Monisha Narke. Yeah.
Yes, that's been my tagline from day one, right? So I have these 3 C's: convenience, collateral damage, and leading to consciousness. So eco-consciousness. So you've got to get to that. And Rukmini has been my school friend. So it's nice. Like, we were in grade 6 together. We lost contact, but the environment brought us back together.
Absolutely.
And she's now my one team, my customer as well. So friend come customer. So thank you, Rukmini, for your commitment to composting. That's another C for you. So you have a lot of C's. But I think, in terms of time, this project requires, as I said right in the beginning, it's not a project you just hand over to a vendor and they'll do it for you. It's your waste. You got to segregate. That's the only thing. After that, once you start adding it, if you have a good technology or very simple system, then it's effortless. Actually, it's just you see the waste just miraculously disappearing. And I started it first in my home, then I did it in my building of 28 families in Mahi. After I was convinced that my building could do it for a couple of years, that's when I spread it to more people. So, and our team is doing an excellent job in hand holding and guiding people on how to do this. I mean, we go an extra mile to teach you the right way. We take care of any bugs that come along the way. But just, yeah, patience, and it works. And then once you train somebody to do it, in the building, you train your housekeeping staff, or in your home, if you're not going to do it, train your buy or something. You just have to add the waste on it initially every day. Then after you get in a habit, even twice a week. So it's quite effortless that once you get in. It's like brushing your teeth ultimately. But you got to get up and you got to brush. You got to add your wet waste in. That's the only thing. So that's how easy it is. So yeah, Aparna, there are some questions if you want me to address. Can we add cooked food, rice, dal, vegetables? Yes, you can add cooked food. In fact, I have in this pile to show you, I had put some cooked food in. There's some bhaji. So it's, yeah, leftover bhaji like this. Little quantities, yes, you can add, not to worry. That's pav bhaji, a little bit my daughter left in the plate. But yeah, if you're having like a party at home with a lot of leftover vegetables or dal, which is greasy, oily, all you do is put it in a colander and you strain it out. As I said, oils are tough to break down, so you want to strain it. But your daily little leftover rice or some leftover bread, you can surely add it in. Meat, fish bones, eggshells are very good. You can add them in. Tea powder, coffee grounds, very good for plant. In fact, you can put your coffee grounds and tea powder directly into the soil like this. Your banana peels also need not. You can start composting today. You don't need a machine. Just take your banana peels. If you have a plant, just throw it in like that, and it's going to break down. You will see the magic in 4 to 5 days. So, in fact, your banana peels, coffee grounds, tea leaves, you can directly add. It's only when the quantities increase you want an aerobic composter system to do this. What doesn't break down is this mango seed you see. It will break down, but it'll take a couple of cycles. It won't break down in 45 days. So corn cobs, mango seeds are hardy. They take time, but you can surely add them in. If you have big stuff, only big stuff, like if you have watermelon, which is full, or you have cauliflower, then just you need to give it a couple of chops. But otherwise, you don't need to sit and break down anything. It'll break down on its own. You don't need to cut it or shed it into. We have handling up to 200 kgs of waste directly from homes without any shredding, without any electrical intervention, directly going to the composters. So this composter has no electricity required. So that makes it user friendly. All the parts are stainless steel, so no rusting. And we have this gasket, as you see. So this makes sure that everything is contained, nothing messy trickles down, no water, comes out. It's neat, clean, and safe to use. So yeah, you want to make sure that the water doesn't keep dripping everywhere. So you want to contain it well, collect it as compost tea, and use it.
Thank you. There is one very, very interesting question about atmospheric temperature and how does the environment and seasonal variation, how does that affect composting?
Yeah. So, Naveed, thanks for asking that important question on seasonal variation. But I'm going to have Dr. Aparna, who's an expert in composting, answer this question. So back to you, yes. Aparna.
I'd love to answer that. As we began that composting is very similar to life. How life begins with us and how we live, and it's actually very similar to our body. As I learned this from Monisha only. The first thing she taught me was composting is very similar to what is happening in our body. If I can eat it and it's fit for my body, I can definitely put it in my composter. Like how I would not want to eat a whole loaf of maida, put it into my stomach. Same way, whole loaf of maida is not a very friendly thing to add it into the composter. As the season changes, as it's winter, we take an overcoat and a sweater and a jacket. Depending on how cold it is, we wrap ourselves. And when it is rainy, we cover it with an umbrella. and if it's hot, we wear light clothes and uh, seek ventilation where it is cooler for us. So similarly, season has a very very important role to play in composting, and the temperature, the outside temperature, is an extremely important factor, because the composting activity is done by the microbes in action in your composting pile. It's the bacteria, the fungi, and the actinomycetes. These three creatures, they are coming in together, and they are doing their job. So they come as visitors and they do their job and then move away. So initially, when you start composting, you have something called as mesophiles. Meso meaning uh, moderate temperature, the phile meaning love. So the bacteria which love the regular temperature, that is our 24 to 30 degree temperature variation, they will come in and they will do the initial breakdown. Their breakdown brings out acids, few acids, and carbon dioxide is released. These acids make the compost pile favorable for the next generation of bacteria and fungi, which are slightly acid loving, to come over and take the job, where they break down in the second phase, where they raise the temperature. Now, the temperature is mainly a function of the bacterial activity. More the activity of your bacteria and fungus in your compost pile, higher the temperature it goes. So it's a function that yes, everything is going well and there is air inside your compost pile. So it will automatically heat up your compost pile, which says that yes, everything is going fine. In a city like Mumbai, we don't really have to worry much about the temperature. We have our composters in places like Chandigarh and Himachal Pradesh, and we've studied those composting piles, and there they took much longer. Here we finish our composting process in about 45 days. There they take over 4 to 5 months or 3 to 4 months, depending on during the winters. It takes much longer for the process to complete. So the length of the process changes depending on the atmospheric temperature, outside temperature. If it is cooler, if it's too hot, like for example Nagpur and all, temperatures go beyond 40, 42, your compost pile becomes very dry. There is no leachate that comes out. In Hyderabad and all, we've noticed that people call us and tell us, oh, there's no leachate coming out, do I need to worry about it? No, not really. One thing we have to ensure that your compost pile is a live and a very dynamic nature in itself. So it will find its way to auto balance itself, auto manage itself. You don't really have to do much intervention, just have to let it be. And we are very lucky to be on a tropical area where the temperature is extremely favorable for fast composting. You just have to place it in an well ventilated area where there is aeration coming in, and let the nature do its job.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
one
hope
more
Naveen
point I
has
want
answered.
to add to that, Aparna, is that well ventilated and shady. Too much
Shady,
extreme
yes.
sunlight will dry
Or
your pile. And one point
right,
on seasonal is the monsoon season or the
yes.
summer or the winter. It your dries will help you balance the temperature well. So if it is monsoon season, when you obviously have higher humidity, higher moisture, you add more browns, right? Because that will absorb the water. In winter, you'll need less browns. So, you need about one third browns, but you can contain, I mean, usually that's the ratio, one third to your wet waste. But accordingly, you can sense your pile, the cooked pile. So, as the pile breaks down, as you see, you will come to know how much to add, what to add, and it becomes earthy texture, then it's done. So, you learn about that as you go along. But yeah, luckily for us, our temperatures are good to handle throughout the year. Uh, Monsoon takes a little longer. Winter is the best time. Even for crops, winter is the best time, right? You get all your leafy vegetables, everything, cauliflower, cabbage, everything grows in winter. Summer, it's a little tight. So, but composting, just a time, couple of days here and there, and you should be fine. So that's with
Yeah.
the time
So
question. Where are we
right.
at? What's next?
So, yeah, what's next is one very, very important question Stuti has asked, how important it is to churn the contents of the composting bin when it is kept in. I had a very long chat with Stuti a few days back, and she was concerned about this whole mixing and smell. So, yeah, one very important thing is about the smell. people are concerned about the smell from composter. So if you and Rukmini both can share some light about smell from composter, it would be good. I think we've covered this point in the last session as well, but it is important to cover it again because we have a new batch of people here.
Rukmini, you want to talk about the smell? Have you had any smell issues?
So only once actually in all these months there was one of the residents. So we have our composter downstairs, right? You saw some photographs of our composter. So it's near the car park area, and nobody has actually ever complained about the smell, except once when one of the residents said, I think, and she's also one of the green champions actually, she said, I think there's some smell issue there, and she was actually concerned that does the smell means there's something wrong, and then there's going to be insects, and then other people in the building will not allow us to continue with the composting. The people who are still not fully converted, she was worried about that. But what we realized is that the compost tea, the water that comes from the composter, the compost tea was not being cleared regularly. It needs to be removed, diluted, and put in the plants. That was not being done as regularly as it should. And that was really the only time when we had that problem. Yes, initially, because people were not segregating waste, nobody's still doing it perfectly, but there was a lot of, small bits and pieces of sachets of tea and little toffee wrappers, and those things would come in. I think at that time there was some smell, but honestly, we really never had a smell issue except these couple of occasions. So there has been no problem. Of course, we have the RUR team we've had them hand-holding us throughout. So, whenever they feel there could be a risk of any of these things, they ensure that that's kind of taken care of, So that's always there. So we
call ourselves the compost busters. We come and we're
compost evangelists. That's the
word. But as I said, we sweat, we smell. It's bound to be at times. But if you do it right, if you understand how to do it right, then it's going to work like a miracle. So yes, and doing it right takes a little while. I can't say I'll give you, you start it and tomorrow it'll be fine. It takes the first few weeks to figure this out, and then
I think Monisha, doing it right, and in a community composting scenario, I think that the important thing is to say that it's not going to be perfect, but it's important to get people on board to even start doing it imperfectly. If we get so hung up about every kind of, about 100% perfect segregation, I think we're going to lose a few people on the way, because some people are nervous, some people are doing it imperfectly. I think, it's a journey for everybody, right? And some people will take longer. They have children who may not be able to, adhere to it. So I think doing it right comes over a period of time, but not to get obsessed about getting 100% perfectly segregated waste, before launching into it. That's never going to happen. That's my experience from, in a community composting.
Correct. And I always tell everybody, follow the 80-20 rule. So, 70 to 80% are on board, go for it. Those 20 naysayers are going to be naysayers. So even in your home or wherever you are, there's going to be that 1, 2 who are not going to be inclined to this. But what I've found is moment people see, this compost becoming a melon, they see the compost becoming a bengan, they see the compost becoming a chili, that's a change maker. Then they are like completely, when they see the fruit of the compost, then they forget everything.
Or just the compost itself. I think compost itself is so magical. You say, oh my God, this was my waste and this is what it's become. I think that itself can kind of get people excited.
And actually, composting, you require a whole day to talk about. There's so many points. But since we promised people that we'll talk a little bit about the gardening as well in today's session, I think we'll just zoom into the gardening, Aparna, in the interest of time. And then I'm happy to stay on.
I was
Aparna's happy to stay on a little longer to address your composting queries, and we can even take it offline. You can always write to us and call us for this.
Yes, that was the next thing that I was going to do, that head over to the gardening session now. So Manisha, do you like to say how to start with, begin gardening? And the main issue concerned with gardening in an urban setup is space. So what are the prerequisites? How do we start? And What
Right.
preparation do we need to do before we start?
So the first step to become a gardener, and I hear a lot of people saying, "अरे, I don't, मेरे हाथ green नहीं है, I don't have a green thumb, मेरे तो plants सब मर जाते हैं." You know, like you start with that pessimistic approach that you can't grow. That's like completely. First thing is that plants listen to you. So it is, they are like humans. They will eavesdrop on your energy. So you have to start with a very positive energy, and you can start today. Like you don't in lockdown, you don't need to go down. You don't need to go anywhere. Just what we're going to tell you is grow your plant today after this workshop. You don't need much. You take a container. So the 2-3 things that you just need for plants, obviously, is air, sunlight, and water. Like we humans need air, sunlight, and water. Plants need air, sun. So you need to look for a space in your home, a ventilated window grill. If your building allows your terrace, if your building allows your compost, if you have a bungalow, then of course anywhere around. You need 4 to 6 hours of sunlight for vegetable plants or herbs or fruiting plants and flowering plants. If you have less than 4 hours of sunlight, because we are so surrounded by buildings, then obviously you stick to what requires less sunlight. So like a pudina. We're going to focus a little bit on edibles and medicinals, not ornamental plants, because right now with lockdown, you want to be self-reliant. You want to grow your own veggies. Like I'm growing a lot of vegetables here. So you want to grow like pudina, your basil, if you have less sunlight. If you have a lot more sunlight, feel free to go whatever is seasonal. We can share your seasonal chart via email. Right now, it's a good time for bhindi, cucumber, bengan, chili, tomato. These you can grow now. Palak methi is usually winter. Cabbage, cauliflower is winter. And you can grow all like tulsi, adulsa. These are some medicinal plants which I grow. Ajwain grows very well. You can make ajwain bhajia. So what you need is if you have compost. Obviously, if you're already composting, you'll have compost. If you're not composting, start composting, because you don't want to bring. A lot of people say, you have to go to the nursery and buy a lot of soil. Soil erosion is another environmental issue. We are taking soil from another place, bring it to the nursery, and bring it to a home. It's very unfair. You got to make your own soil. So for that, you take a container. The size of container depends on the plant you are deciding to grow. So in this case, as you can see, I'm going to grow little microgreens like methi and rai, some of this stuff that you can see the leaves have come up. If I want to grow chili, depending on the root, it's going to go deep. I will take a container which is more vertical. So flat is about 12 inches in height, and you have a diameter about 12 inches, or even smaller. Your dahi ka dabba, if you have leftover dahi ka dabba, also you can use. You take a deeper container, 18 inches height, 18 dia, 15 inches dia is also good for your bengal. Like I've used some old plastic containers from a Radiwala, got them cut and used. They are very sturdy, durable, long lasting. So this is what I have. And then what I do is I have my container making some holes at the bottom is important to drain the water out. And you add dry leaves at the base. So you make a layer of dry leaves or coconut husks, and you top it with some compost. If you have, ideally, if you don't have too much compost, you can add some soil into it. 1:1 soil to compost, but if you have all compost, then you can grow in compost. And then the seeds. So like I have kept some methi seeds from my kitchen. Just dig into your kitchen cupboards, you'll find a lot of seeds. And I've got rai today. So all you have to do is you have to, depending on the seed, if it's rai methi, you sprinkle it. And if you are doing bengan or chili, you can save your chilies. Like we have chili now, allow it to become red, harvest the seeds, make a hole, little hole, as deep as the size of your seed, and then put 3-4 seeds in it and top it up. Always leave the soil, as you see, loose. You don't want to pack in the soil because you want air and water to go. And watering is very important. We tend to overwater our plants. They only, like when you have holes, you see only when 1 or 2 drops of water come out from the hole, then you're sure your watering is right. If too much water is coming out, you're overwatering. If your leaves become yellowish, then you're underwatering. So the plant speaks to you. Talk to your plants, understand them, and then offer them water and food. Food is compost. You can add it every 15 days, every month as you go along. But these are some basics. So just start with something. When the first leaves come, like I have mine here today, there's always joy. And then you see this little leaves are going to grow. And then you can have it either as microgreens, or you can allow the plant to grow fully and have it as a full-fledged plant. So this is the basic to get you started on how you can start growing stuff. Sourcing seeds is important. You can save them at home from existing fruits that you have, or tomato, you kind of collect the seeds, wash it and dry it and then use it. Or you could go to an organic nursery, and we can share a list with you where you can source seeds from. I think we are available even online, and you can order some good seeds to grow. So this is how you can get started.
Oh, great. Perfect. So, apart from that, if you'd like to throw some light on what are common pests that are, that can affect the plants and how to deal with them.
Correct. So yeah, this is
And
another thing. Like people say composting smells, and that's a myth. Plants get pests. That's another myth, I think. So if you're following natural farming, or like I started my talk today with being in the forest, does anybody go and sweep the forest? Does anybody go and spray anything in the forest? No. Nature balances it out. So there's a prey-predator concept. So whenever a bug comes, remember somebody else is going to come and eat it. So if you allow it to deal with it naturally, the prey-predator concept, and allow it to prevail, you don't need to really bother. You may lose a few leaves here and there if there's a bug eating. I usually don't bother adding anything. But yeah, I mean, if you have a small window and you're not getting all your, there are these, because of air pollution in Mumbai and cities, we get these mealy bugs coming, and because the pores get blocked. So usually wipe out the bug with a cotton. First, try to identify which bug it is. Try to deal with it directly by just wiping it off. Otherwise, you can add, boil some garlic in water and add it. Natural, like how we take natural herbs for when we get a cough, we have haldi. Haldi is also very good. You can add haldi water to the plants. Look for natural. So what I usually do is I recommend companion gardening. So if I'm growing chili tomato, I will keep a space for lemongrass, or neem is in my farm. We have a lot of neem trees growing. In the window grill, you can't really put neem. So instead of neem, you put tulsi, you put marigold. These are natural pest repellents. These plants itself are companions to the other plants growing. So companion farming, if you search, you will find that there is a companion that will help you take care of your bugs. So these are some natural remedies. A lot of people say that neem oil works. Well, neem oil is effective. You have to add neem oil with a little soap, dilute it in water, and then spray it. But again, you can do without neem oil also if you follow companion, or if you just live and let live policy for your plants. Yeah.
And a bit about maintenance, if you could share how to maintain the garden. Like it has grown, it has sown, but how do you maintain it?
Yeah.
Things.
So maintenance, I mean, if you're a fresh first gardener, just allow it to grow. Don't worry about pruning and maintaining. Even I'm not an expert yet, and it takes years to figure that out. But you remember to harvest in time. So, when you see your first bengan, you don't know when to pluck it. That's the biggest challenge. So, you think it's going to grow really big and you wait. You should pluck it when it's soft and tender, because otherwise it will get hard and you won't be able to use it. So harvesting, you should note when to harvest once you get your crop. And usually it comes with taste. Like if you harvest it earlier and it's kacha, you will know that next time I have to wait longer. So it's more by trial and error. Another thing is mulching. One very easy thing that you can do is mulch. So mulching is nothing but just adding crushed leaves on your top layer like this. You just put leaves on the top soil like that, so that it will not It'll allow the soil to be cool and prevent excess evaporation, especially now in summer. So mulching is a good maintenance step. And watering, of course, daily in the summer is important. And very important to water daily. So this is important. And in monsoon, you need not water every day. So these are some maintenance to start with. You can grow your microgreens and start with that. They're easy, know when to harvest them. You can write to us. We will guide you more about anything specific. But my aim today was to just get you to get started. It's very easy. Get started, play around with it. And now lockdown is a good time. You have some time in hand, so you can experiment. And, you will see something or the other will grow. And once you start growing one thing, then you'll see like how many chilies are there in this plant, There are lots to feed the whole family.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for this simple way to get started. We are having a consistent question about the price of the composting system. This
So
thing.
the model that I have here is actually a demo model. We have different sizes, like shirt sizes. They're XS, S, M, L. The one at Rukmini's building, which you saw in the slideshow at Sand Pebbles, is the M model. So for a family, I think there are about 24 families, I think, in the building. They have 24 to 30. They have 3M. So the pricing starts from 15,000 for the home. It is available on Amazon, and it goes all the way up to 62,500 for the larger size models, which Siemens has. So if you write to us, we'll customize and send you a proposal. The pricing will be worked out based on number of families, the number of wet waste generation. But like short siders, there are different models. There's excess. So it can cater from one family to a small bungalow to many families, going up to 400 families as well.
Yes, so now I'll take one final question, which was recently asked. That is coriander. How to grow coriander seed? I think that's one tricky little creature to grow. And how to grow those? So if you could throw some light on that, I could share some points on that.
Dhania is a delicate seed. I mean, it's a delicate plant. Its season is gone. It's good during Jan, Feb, March, December, November, December onwards. You couldn't grow dhania easily. If you have a shaded spot and you put a net, you could even grow it now. So usually, just like how I showed you, sprinkle the seeds. Dhania you would sprinkle on a layer of soil and compost, or if you don't have too much compost, then add soil. If you have compost, then only compost. And you sprinkle the seeds there and cover it with a layer of soil, layer of compost, and add water regularly. Dhania, you can ideally soak it a bit overnight and then put it into the soil. Aparna, what's your take? How do you do it?
Yeah, what we do is what my mom does is she hand crushes the seed of dhania so that it breaks open, and then it's easier to sow and easier to like you get a faster, higher germination rate when it is broken. Some seeds require that. Also, seed is very important. So you have to get the right variety of seed for dhania because the rate at which it grows is a little questionable. If you don't start with a good seed, your germination rate would be slower, and break it open. Just hand crush it between your palms, and it easily opens. Not too much pressure that you crush all the leaves, all the seeds, but just hand crush mildly so that it breaks open. I think this was a very, very interactive session with lots of very, very interesting questions. I'm sure we haven't been able to answer all the questions. You can write to us at info@rur.co.in. We would be more than happy to take your questions. You can call us. Our number will be there when we. I was saying that I think we've not been able to take all the questions, but it's important to stick to the time. We've already overshot by 13 minutes, and we will bring this session to a closure right now. We can take the questions offline. We will be sending the details, all the presentation as well as the recording of the today's session by email to your registered email address. And you can write to us with your specific questions via email, or call us, or send us a WhatsApp message. And do not forget to follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. We keep all our activities updated on our social media platform. As I started, we can't email everything to you. Yes, e-certificate will be given. You will have to fill up the feedback form to ensure that you have attended the session. So after filling in the feedback form, after 7 to 8 working days, we will be able to send you the uh, e-certificates. I hope you all had a wonderful session. I have to thank Rukmini and Miss Monisha for taking out their valuable time for over an hour and patiently answering all the questions from us. And yes, it was a wonderful session for me. I totally enjoyed, and I hope everybody who attended the session did enjoy.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Thank you. Thank you, Aparna. Thank you, Aryur. This is brilliant.
thank
Yeah. And I just want to thank Rukmini, Aparna. Rukmini's actually started her journey with Aryuvar back in 2009. When we just started, she was one of our first volunteers. I remember doing a workshop in Bandra, and she'd come to one of our friends' home. So Rukmini's been a dear friend and really committed to, green environment from day one that I know. So thank you, Rukmini, for
My honor.
walking the talk and really living by the environment. We need more people like you on the planet to protect our generations ahead. So
Thanks.
thanks for being a planet protector, a green champion, and always
All you,
being
yeah.
committed to composting. And now I'm waiting for us to meet, to have some coffee with you, and have grow some good stuff in your garden below. So it's time to grow some
Absolutely.
more veggies.
But I'm so heartened to see your RUR's fan following. I mean, you have so many people who stayed on and who were asked, and I can see why. I mean, I'm a fan as well, so I can see why. But more power to all of you and to everybody who attended this. I'm sure everybody is doing their bit for greening. Yeah. More power to everybody.
Big gratitude to all our friends who've joined us, spent a large amount of time, and all our webinars have been having registrations up to 150, 200 people. So we are going to have many more coming your way. So stay tuned and stay in touch with us for more and more. We also do Insta live sessions, so there are different ways you can catch more green yarn with RUR. So thank you once again, Rukmini. Thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you to our Dr. Aparna. She is our head of research and project operations. She's the one behind all the action at RUR, really. So, Dr. Aparna Pandey, thank you for being the moderator of today's session and sharing your great insights.
Thank you, ma'am. I had super fun time today.
Take care. Stay safe, stay home, stay sustainable.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.